Hey, what's up, guys? Today I have with me Lambo, and we'll be discussing a couple of Serral's most recent games against Protoss. A lot of people always tell me that Protoss is incapable of beating Zerg, but yet we have by far the best CVP player in the world, dropping 3 games against players that I think could be considered quite a bit worse than him. So it's an interesting set of games to look at, Lambo. Welcome, first of all.
Yeah, nice to be here. To be honest, you invited me saying you have 3 Serral games. I thought it was like top secret ladder games, and I could learn a thing or two, but instead it's 3 losses of them. So, yeah, thanks for inviting me, I guess.
You're welcome. It is my pleasure, as always. So yeah, we have three different games from Hero, Zest, and Skillet. All of these were played in the most recent Caster Civil War. We're starting with the Hero game, who in my opinion is the most interesting Protoss player currently as well. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I think he's the first player that actually brought a new style. There are some Protosses that even just said ground is not possible at all, and he just came up with a new way of playing it, with quick expansions, very low on gas. So it's very interesting because I didn't have enough practice against it yet. So when Ranger asked me what to do against it for the first time ever, I was like, okay, this is what I think is good against it, but I can't actually tell because we don't have Hero on the EU ladder.
Yeah, he's quite good at it. It's funny because it feels often a lot of Heroes builds aren't necessarily super tight or extremely optimized for the goal that they want to achieve. But because he's so extremely chaotic and plays at such a high tempo, stuff just kind of seems to work out for him for whatever reason. And it's sometimes difficult to copy because of that as well, because a lot of stuff only works because he has a lot of different styles, a lot of different openers, that these days honestly all kind of tend to eventually go into that 4-gas style. Like, he has a lot of different builds, but he really likes going into that heavy 4-gas style.
Yeah. I think one thing about Hero's play that is very much so his own is that he clears creep a lot in the early game, no matter what build he does, and he really focuses on that. And that's how his style can work, because if the Zerg has creep at half the map, you can't just run in the middle of it with a bunch of blink stalkers, because even if you blink back, you're still gonna get caught. So no matter what he opens up with, there's always some slight aggression, or at least a lot of oracles that enable him to move out.
Yeah, definitely. This game, I do believe he does not actually end up going into that 4-gas style, but he does play a very aggressive type of game. I mean, this is 2K Atmosphere, and he's opening up with Twilight Council, which is, I think, somewhat rare, especially the Glaive follow-up. And this is another thing that I think only Hero does, is that he really likes playing these type of 3-gate openers with Glaive, without a quick robotics facility, which means that reinforcement on the spot is going to be extremely difficult. But this initial push is quite powerful, or at least it's somewhat okay. It just falls off very quickly, and he has the ability to make some type of quick tech switch, as well as get good eco with a slightly faster third base.
Yeah, it's quite tricky to play against this, because usually you do not know what follow-up it is, and it could even be Phoenix or something like that. And then also, you could also just be adding a robo that's a little bit delayed, and then 3 more gateways, and then go into some form of glaive all-in. So since he plays all those different follow-ups, it's actually quite hard to know when to drone. And Hero's also crazy, so usually, whenever Protoss players play this build, as you said, there is no extra warp in, so usually it's like a pressure, and then you go across the map. Normally, Protoss players never finish their shade, but with Hero, you really can't know. Like, you can see him move out right now with 4 adepts. Imagine just 16 Zerglings surrounding those, the build would completely fall flat on its face, so it's very difficult to know when you can drone against a player like that.
Yeah, and I think it's also kind of important to note that really the only reason majority of his builds work is because he doesn't just play one. Like, if you were to just, as any other pro player, copy this build and play this build 7 times, every single time you play a glaive opener, it's just this, you would get completely blind countered, or even just, you know, kind of hard countered, because the opponent can kind of scout and figure it out in some somewhat easy way. And yeah, it would just completely fail. Like, this type of move out, for adept pressure with glaives, like at 440, like, this is so insanely late, but yet we see the response out of Serral. He has a Spore in the natural, he's building 31 links, and he's getting 3 roaches as well. Is it at this point a little bit of an overreaction for what he scouted, or is this really the appropriate thing? He was aware of the fact that there was either no robo or a late robo.
Yeah, I think he could have popped out a couple of more drones for sure. I think this is too too defensive, and I really don't understand the sport because he even scouted for proxy pylons. So there obviously could have been a proxy dark shrine. The only location he didn't see was the complete bottom right of the map. So yeah, I personally would have made 0 spores and a couple extra drones, and then just links. I think you don't even need roaches until you even see a war prism leave, because there cannot be that many adepts on your side of the map.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's what I'm kind of feeling as well. Third base is pretty delayed, so I think if you're Serral here right now, you don't see the third base. Your mind either goes to some type of double Stargate, especially because he hasn't seen the Robo in the natural yet, or it's going to be like maybe a 6 gate of some sort. Then again, you'd probably see extra gateways in the main, right?
Yeah, I mean, Hero could have theoretically put him on the left side of his natural, and that would have been impossible for him to see because of the way his Overlord was positioned. But yeah, it's either attack follow-up, so DT or Robo Bay, or the 6 gate pretty much. Otherwise, the third base should be faster.
Yeah.
Or Stargates it could have been as well.
Yeah, some double Stargate follow-up. And all of these are follow-ups as well that Hero has played in the past, so you really do need to keep every single thing into account. A little bit of a... For a depth drop, of course not going to be dealing too much damage against a player like Serral. Moves the queens in the correct positions. At this point, how comfortable would you be feeling in Serral's spot? He built a bunch of Ravagers as well, as aiming for some type of counter-attack.
I would think that I need to get some damage done now, because all he saw so far was 4 adepts and now a prism drop, so it's almost always going to be Robo Bay. And he made way too many units for that, but now that he can counter-attack, I mean, if he gets the Nexus, he's getting some good trades here now as well. And it should, once again, be fine. I obviously was in a position of being his teammate in this tournament, so at this point I thought if he didn't get the Nexus, I thought it was awful for him.
Yeah. I'm not sure if I saw this correct, but I think the Disruptor killed the Nexus and there was no cancel on the Nexus as a result.
Yes, that is what happened.
I just wanted to point that out real fast once again. Yeah, Protoss players. Very nice. At this point, it's still not absolutely brilliant though, right? Like as Hero, you still have some decent assets. You mentioned before that denying the creep spread. Although I don't think too many tumors have actually gone down just by how active Hero has been with everything. It feels like Serral hasn't really had the time to focus too much on spreading creep. Like there's hardly any tumors for a 6 minute and 30-second game, no? Like this is very poor creep spread.
Yeah, very often against this type of openers, you also don't really want to put more than 1 tumor per lane because you want to save for transfusions. Those are some good disruptor hits as well. Because yeah, there's like immortal adept follow-ups against which transfusions are super good. Also just the multiple adepts with a couple of disruptors, which is relatively common. So I think saving some transfusers is good, but he also was just AFK with some of the tumors. Like these have not been spreading because of how active Hero's been playing.
Yeah. So here we kind of have like an almost seemingly random push out of Hero, which it feels like a fake kind of to force out units. I mean, you have your Blink, you have your +1 on the way. Serral kind of is buying the fake, but at the same time, it's also not weak enough that you can completely, you know, just disrespect it and build pure drones. What is actually the correct response here? Do you just get like 4 or 5 Ravagers and you build 12 links, take a forward base and pray that there's no big warping coming, or like?
Yeah, I think something like that. To be honest, if you didn't lose the 3 Ravagers to the 2 Disruptors, I think almost making 0 units there and just having a drone in the wall would have been enough. As long as you don't have to split your army, what he has right now already is plenty to defend the push itself. And Hero's army also can never commit because there's sentries and disruptors and you can't lift both. Like usually if they actually want to engage, it's just adepts and disruptors, like the way he's set up now.
Yeah, it makes it a lot easier to because you're not really committed to a position if you don't have sentries there. Adepts are very quick, disruptors can always pick up. Hero gets a couple of queens. Is that a 1 HP prison? Yeah, nice. Calculated. Yeah, at this point though, I think if you're in Serral's shoes, not too comfortable, right? Almost no creep, no forward base, no upgrades. I mean, no Baneling speed. How much do you care right now about Baneling speed or Banelings in general? Like, they're not super great right now, but in the future you will need them, no? The next minute and a half?
Yeah, I think it's fine to delay it, especially with a bad early game. I would for sure say Hero's in the lead. And usually if I'm behind as Zerg, getting Baneling speed against some of the timings, like Hero could just be staying on 4 gas as he is doing right now. And then you don't really want to morph Banelings anyways. They're, as you said, more of a little bit later into the mid game type of unit where you're a little bit more rich and you just want to make your army better. But for now, I think just Roach Ravager and trying to get the crew spread out is what he has to do.
Yeah, and this is one of the things as well that make it very difficult if it's an extremely active game to hold the fort base. If you don't have creep there, disruptors become, well, somewhat overpowered against roaches because it's really hard to micro against disruptors off creep. And in general, engaging into a Toss army of creep can be kind of, well, hell, honestly. So this type of move of hero, just kind of staying on the edge of creep. Jesus Christ. If that doesn't happen, he has. I think Serral is going to have a really difficult time ever taking a fort now. The right side, I guess, is somewhat viable, but good lord. Yeah, that was rough.
That was perfectly timed corrosive bias, pretty much, and Hero went the wrong direction. I think at least one of the disruptors, if he went to the left, could have been saved. Also, you can just, even though they fire, you can still just load them up into the War Prism. It cancels the shot, but it's better to save the disruptors, obviously.
In this type of position, what would you say on almost playing like an E-Laser-like style, just rushing into Hive a little bit faster, trying to get out Vipers, and then... I don't want to say it, but maybe even get some lurkers out? Is that something you'd recommend, or...?
Yeah, I think if you're behind, you can either play fast Hive and then go Roach Ravager into some Vipers or Lurkers straight away. That's definitely a strong style against what Hero is doing. But since you're already committed to the Baning speed, I think you just have to stay on Ravager Bane, and he can potentially add in some Vipers. But usually from behind, I would prefer to just stay on Ravager Bane at first and then try to get us around engagement.
Oh, the Hero actually is playing that Forgas style, by the way. I thought he would, I guess because he had Disruptor and Immortal, I didn't quite remember it as well, but yeah, it's kind of Forgassy.
Forgassy? It's Forgas.
yeah, but you know, it's different. Usually it's just pure Stalker Zealot, now there's Sentries and Disrupts, it confuses me. Immortal's even there. Because the nice thing usually about the style is that it's really easy to engage and disengage positions. But if the moment you have like these bigger units, your Immortals, your Sentries and Disruptors, it feels a lot harder. And it also feels like a lot more is kind of riding on them either not dying or dealing a lot of damage. Once you're kind of playing around these bigger tech units. At least that's what I feel like.
Yeah, for sure. But I think this is mostly a result of him being forced to stay on 2 base and 4 gas. So the way the mineral to gas ratio worked out this game, there's no way to skip on that. Now, Serral is pretty good at splitting his army usually, so he took some good fights here. To be honest, in his position, I would have felt awful pretty much throughout ever since the early game was over, but he's really good at just splitting his army perfectly and also keeping some Banelings wherever the Zealots come from.
Yeah, even managing to get a little Baneling run by on the map. Like, what are, if you're playing this type of style, like what are you really aiming for eventually? Because if you're playing this low a drone count, a Ravagerling Bane type of army seems somewhat non-viable, because you're never going to be trading very efficient with Banelings ever, at least not cost efficient. So this is why usually you see higher drone count. So you're either trying to kill workers or you're trying to get into some type of higher tech. Like, what is the end goal here?
His end goal right now is to just survive and stay in the game because he thinks he's behind, I'm pretty sure. And also you're playing against Hero, and he knows he's going to attack eventually. So in that case, he's really just playing to survive, and then there's a good chance that his opponent is going to attack into him, and with a slightly bigger army than usual, he can try to take a good fight and then maybe counter-attack something like that.
Alright. Creep is still pretty contained at this point as well. Triple Disruptors. I personally wouldn't mind so much if Hero actually gets into Storm a little bit more when he plays this style. Especially if you play against heavy Ravagerling Bane on such low eco. It feels like that would be very powerful. It feels like Storm has way less of a hard counter on low eco than Disruptor or Immortal does.
Yeah, no, for sure. But he's actually going Dark Shrine instead, so you can morph Archons with a little bit less gas. Which is also interesting.
Yeah, I almost always feel like that when Tosses either stay on pure Archon or this type of non-Templar army, that it's almost a little bit of laziness of not wanting to have to add like another dimension into the army. Like it sometimes feels very easy to just continue building these fighting units. You kind of get stuck in that mindset sometimes.
Yeah, so Serral took great trades here, by the way. Like, honestly, he got all the disruptors on the left side and he defended the Zealot run by on the right. Just again, having the army split properly.
Yeah.
So that was pretty good. And Hero just overstepped a little bit on creep. He didn't wait for the creep to recede enough, I guess.
Yeah, and also I think it was the first time he really saw those Vipers, no? Like, he was aware that Hive was on the way, but I think the first time he sees the Vipers, he immediately loses 2 or 3 disruptors here in this little fight, which is kind of painful. Yeah, the flank is good. Yeah, 3 disruptors go down practically immediately. Right side also was a correct split, even some Banelings in there. It's always very frustrating if it's Roaches and Banelings defending, because then Zealots are actually useless.
Yeah.
Against pure
you know
Bane,
what's
you
also
can...
very frustrating? If I send my Roach Baneling and then the Zealot run by is already there and then they automatically split up because that's how Zealots work. And then I'm like, damn it. 5 Banelings against 1 Zealot is not as good.
Yeah, as 5 against 12. Yeah, it feels bad. Yeah, it still feels like a good position for Hero though. I think the moment you can keep Zerg on anything that is lower than 7 gas, like you're usually in an okay spot.
Minus 2 more disruptors, so he is losing all of his gas now, so it doesn't really matter. He just wants to trade out pretty much and outmine him at the end of the day. And now there's a big Zealot runway again.
Yeah, and the nice thing against very low eco Zerg as well is the moment that you kill like 10-12 workers, it is super impactful into the game immediately. Like it feels like, yeah, it feels very, very nice. Way more so than anything else. It is also a very good fight. I think this is game, isn't it? Yeah.
This was game. Yeah. The Zealot runway at the bottom basically there. One time there were no Banelings there, it won him the game immediately. Because you need to kind of over split your army. Otherwise the Zealots without micro against the Roaches without micro actually tend to do very well.
Yeah. It's kind of funny that after this fight it feels like Serral actually has some space. He gets a cancel on the 5th base, but then I guess he's out of position once or doesn't quite have enough units at home. Is the mistake then sending out the Ling run by, or is this like kind of like how do you prepare for 40 Zealots showing up on the right side?
Well, preferably you have map control a little bit more, so either more creep, so to give you more of a warning, or have all the Banelings in that army. The Banelings in the left side army don't really do anything, so if he has like 8 Banelings on the right side, that looks very different. So
yeah.
I feel like it would have been doable. The entire game, I'm pretty much feel like Hero was winning. And at this point, actually, I thought, okay, maybe Serral can make a comeback, but yeah, that fight was just too good for Hero.
Yeah, it's tough. Well, all right. So that is the first way, my friends, on how to beat Serral with Protoss. So we'll now be heading into our second game, which is going to be Skillas on Blackburn. All right, so our second game, like mentioned, Skillas against Serral on Blackburn. Now, what do we think of Blackburn in general as a ZVP map? I know a lot of Zergs actually kind of like it or don't mind it too much because of the gold on the 4th base, which also has double gases. Of course, isn't the pride of Altara's gold, but it's still pretty decent. But I also don't think most Protoss players mind it too much. Like, it's pretty easy to defend your first 4, maybe even 5 bases. There's not too many space for run-bys either, which I think Tosses might struggle against. Like your average Baneling run-by enjoyer like Elaser might not be the happiest on this map.
Yeah, I personally like the map simply because of the gold base. It also kind of rewards you for being out on the map as a Protoss as well, because you can try to deny the gold base a little bit. So you need to make some early units, which I don't mind as a Zerg. So there's some dynamic there in the matchup, even if it's some oracles into ground. Usually both players are supposed to be on the map a little bit at the very least. But yeah, I know all the Korean Zergs pretty much hate it against Protoss, and I'm not exactly sure why. But I mean, this map is kind of easy to split, but I don't mind that either really, because I don't really hate late game or anything. But overall, I think it's a relatively balanced map.
Yeah, I feel the same. I also like to just point out that Skillas scouted for a proxy hatchery on the 3rd base. It's a big move against Serral, showing how confident he is in the macro game if you're looking for that type of stuff. I think the last time Serral proxy hatched on the 3rd base against the Toss must have been in 2012 or something. I don't think he actually ever does anything like that, no? Like, he used the 12 move a little bit.
There's a legitimate chance he never did it in his entire life, so...
Yeah. It's a big move out of Skillas. Very confident. Also opened up with a gas first, by the way. So the most economical opener that allows for a very quick Stargate by, what is it, about like 8 seconds faster than your regular Stargate usually is. Depending a bit on how much gas you want to mine in the early game usually, but it can be a lot quicker. And we see that out of Skillets. Usually there's also opens. This opener follows up into a Stargate. It's kind of rare to see a gas first opener into a Twilight Council. And Serral's going to figure out the same thing as well. As he spots the Stargate with that initial Overlord. Serral has a couple of different Overlord things that he does. Sometimes he gets a second Overlord on the map to send it in. Although he's kind of moved away from that recently. Do you happen to have anything to do with that? Or are you aware of the thought process there with the second Overlord?
Yeah, I mean, he just wants to mix it up pretty much. I don't think you can do the same stuff every time. Otherwise, the second Overlord obviously is bad. But if you do it 1 out of 3 games, I think it's pretty decent, especially against players that don't play as much Stargate. But nowadays, Protoss players rarely even check for Overlords around their base, and usually, even if they go Void Ray, just send it across after killing the first Overlord. So having a second one on the map is a pretty good mix-up. But obviously you can also get punished. So usually you mix up between just having one on the map, then a second one completely hidden just for an Overseer scout, and then having a second one close by.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, so he spots the Phoenix into Oracle. That gives you some extra freedom, knowing that there's a second Stargate unit. Just, you know, being aware that your roach run can be delayed by another, what, like 10-15 seconds or so?
Yeah. I mean, I happen to know Serral's thought process in this game exactly because he told me. He knew the moment he saw the Phoenix that it was gonna be 2 Stargate Phoenix. So, but he's still lost. So that's
impressive.
We can see why. Yeah, we're gonna be able to figure out why that happened.
2 Stargate Phoenix is a pretty powerful build, though. To be fair, I think especially since the Queen Walk nerf, I think this is the one build that actually is pretty difficult to kill if you don't already have plans of killing it, right? Like with a Nidus, it should always be possible to kill, I believe. Right? Am I wrong there?
Well, we're gonna see that in this game.
So we're gonna see that. Oh.
Yeah. He is trying to kill it. He went for a relatively fast layer, and he's gonna try to Nidus it. The thing is, the Nidus got nerfed because you actually need to wait for the creep now until you can move forward, which is very annoying, especially if you don't get a Nidus right next to the base. So the Queen Walk nerf also affected some of the other builds, like the Taxi or the Nidus, because very often you can catch some queens or some units without transfuse nearby.
Okay. Is the Evo Chamber a fake here, by the way, or is it actually? Yeah, okay. No. Is some classic Zerg trickery going on? And the lack of a fort base after such a clean early game is also a bit of a tell at some point, no?
Yeah, I think he's still gonna get it, but the reason it's so late is because he already is making extra queens, of course.
Yeah. A little bit of a Ling run by. I also find it that quite often when Zergs try to do something aggressive, like a 60 drone-ish timing, that they very often build like a flood of Lings initially to kind of distract the Protoss, forget him, so that he kind of forgets to revelate, or is forced to use the pulsar beam at home, so he can't really revelate any of the bases anymore. Against some players, it's a very consistent tell that something is happening. Because E-Laser usually builds 2 Lings, or he builds 26. If it's 26, there's roaches following up.
And I sure hope for you that Laser is not watching your YouTube videos.
There go all my tells.
Yeah.
Watching this with the notebook. Okay, so it goes for the Nidus. So in my mind, theoretically, this is a win for Serral. Usually.
Yeah.
I find it difficult, especially with like a... I don't know. I'm not sure actually, especially with a double robo follow-up, but I'm not a huge fan of double robo
the follow-up of Skillos is the worst possible as well. The best would have been just making gateway units.
Yeah. Okay, that's what I thought. Cool. Okay, so Overseer goes into the main base. First Night is actually really close as well. Like, this is literally as close you're gonna get. In between third and natural, which is also probably the ideal position, because that forces Protoss to split the static defense between 2 bases. What are we looking at here for Serral? Like, what does he want to do?
Basically, he wants to wait for his creep to come forward a little bit, then burst down the super battery, and then just try to kill units one by one. You can already see here, this Ravager would not have died last patch, but it died this patch because there was no creep close enough to transfuse it. So that's -1 Ravager already. And yeah, I mean, Serral just needs a good fight. He needs a Queens, preferably in between the bases, to tank against the Immortals, and then corrosive bile on the static defense, but you still don't want to overstep with the Ravagers so they can't get lifted, you know?
Yeah. You also see that like half the queen still is barely on creep, or just barely not on creep. So that makes life a little bit harder with the transfuses. Like all the high energy queens right now are in the front. Was this move a little bit too far forward with the Ravagers? A bit too quick?
I think it wasn't really. He could have maybe pushed a little bit slower, but I don't think he could have positioned them any closer to the queens realistically.
So what did, like, he has a very good supply right now. Do you think he's just supposed to wait? Like, what is their coming for skills? He has 6 gateways, I guess 1 more immortal on the way. Like, how much of a hurry are you really in?
You're against Treasure the Icon, you want to go as fast as possible. Against the gateway style, not as much. Like if there's just stalkers and sentries, but against this style, I would be pretty worried to wait. And yeah, like he's trying to hug his queens as much as possible with the Ravagers. So they're not even that far forward, but as you said, like some of the queens just happen to be off creep, and they will not be able to transfuse.
So there, any big mistakes that we spotted, or not really?
I think he needed to disengage against the super battery. Like he barely didn't get it. I think that was a game losing pick pretty much. Like if a super battery stays there for the entire duration,
yeah, that's a lot.
I don't think you can win fights.
Yeah, at least if the Protoss build order is somewhat decent. Yeah. No, I agree. A lot of Phoenix still end up going down here in the dying second, which kind of sucks. Because it feels like he was pretty safe at this point already. Like, you have 3 immortals shooting. I feel like that's a pretty big mistake. Because in this type of scenario, if you have like 6, 7 Phoenixes alive, and you kill all the queens, you force the Zerg to rebuild all of these queens, so many queens so quickly. And while the queens are rebuilding, you'll still be capable of getting like a crap ton of workers. You can also, in the worst case scenario, just sacrifice your Phoenixes to kill like 15 workers or so. And if the Zerg already is only on 60 workers, I think that's a 100% game winner.
Yeah, I agree with that. But yeah, either way, Skillus is in a pretty amazing position now. The question is, can he actually kill his opponent or not? So now Serral is once again going to just try to play to survive pretty much.
Yeah, this seems to be a theme in a lot of the Serral games as well. So if he gets in a bad spot, it has to be so frustrating for him, where you know that you're supposed to be winning the game because you're better, but you know, it just barely doesn't come back into your grasp. It just stays out of reach, you know, ever so slightly. Every single time you try your heart out, it just isn't enough. Yeah, that
is really what the hero game felt like to me as well. Because there's so many disruptors that he got for free, and then he probably had hope, and then 20 zealots show up at the third base.
That is the worst feeling. I've had so many games against people like 1200 MMR below me, where I lose 12 workers to an Oracle that I didn't realize was there, because make some bad joke for my stream, and then for the next 25 minutes I'm trying to come back being down 70 supply with 3 disruptors and 8 stalkers. He just keeps eating disruptor shot after disruptor shot. Then I press the rewind button at the end of the game. He was on 12 base and 150 probes. I sat there believing. No shot. As Skillus here, I think you're just kind of wanting to deny a little bit of creep. Kind of want to check your opponent's eco as well, but you don't ever want to commit on creep, and you don't ever want to give Serral a fight. The only way you really lose is attacking usually into like a 66 drone Roach Ravager type of play, and Serral is actually completely preparing for that, also with the Mutalisk, which is a very classic I'm behind Zerg type of play, you know? Where you hope the Protoss attacks into you, you stay low drone count. And on this map it's even nice because you have the gold, right? So you have like a lot of extra minerals with those 66 workers. Then you counterattack with the Mutas. If you get 15 workers in this type of scenario, Serral's in a very reasonable position.
Yeah, I think it's one of the biggest comeback plays in StarCraft for every race, to be honest, to just overmake units, hope your opponent attacks and then do a run by or a counterattack at the same time.
Yeah.
It can be with invisible units as well, but we don't have really those, so we do the flying ones instead, and that worked out perfectly for him because he even killed the War Prism. At this point, once again, I thought, hey, this actually, now it looks doable for him. Because you also have the names of the players, right?
Yeah.
So you're like, hey, Yona is maxed, he can probably take this one. But the actual state of the game, Skillus is still ahead, even though he's struggling to deal with the Mutas.
Yeah, 12 workers is really a lot. I'm kind of surprised here that Serral isn't going up to a higher drone count at this point, like 82. 83, or like maybe a little bit earlier already. Guess he built 7 now.
He had nothing to saturate. If you look at his bases right now, they're already saturated. He's even sending workers from the main to the extra base.
Would you want to stay on 7 gas here or go up to 8? If
I think I would stay on 7. If I'm Serral, I don't think my opponent's ever gonna throw down a fleet beacon, to be honest, and I would stay on 7.
Yeah, just stay on 7, still get the hive, maybe get Viper, that's it?
Yeah, get a hive. Get a hive and a greater spray to, you know. So if the opponent knows, okay, I don't want to go late game, let me attack.
Yeah. What kind of is the goal right now for Serral? Because at this point, he probably has the best army he's going to get in the next minute and a half, 2 minutes, I would say. Is that fair? So
that's fair. You cannot go off creep though.
Yeah.
That's it. I think it's impossible. So
he wants to fight.
His play is to get us around, yeah.
Yeah. And he kind of gets us around, but off creep. Couple of disruptor shots. Good control as well. Bailing flank comes in a little late because they kind of got tricked into going up the ramp. Yeah, this is not a great fight for Serral, but probably still the best he could have hoped for off creep, no? Or
yeah, I think he should have waited a little bit more until he actually engaged. So Skillos was more towards the left, and he couldn't retreat to that little cliff because at that cliff it's not a full surround anymore. And as you said, the banings were a little bit mistimed.
Wait, one more time. Sorry, slow it down for me.
I think he should have tried to completely hide his army for a little bit longer. So Skillos steps a little bit more to the left.
So like really down near the big Ultralisk statue.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and then you can come from the bottom as well. You can come from the top right side. What about just allowing Skillos to kind of go where he wants to go? Like wherever that's going to be, and you counterattack instead with like a portion of the banelings, then hope that Skillos panics and attacks on creep. I guess then you don't have a remax, and you do have a pretty decently sized bank.
Yeah, it's a little bit rough on this map because the Protoss can just go behind the gold base, and then if he goes to the top base, it's an awful fight as well.
Yeah, there's
because
no
all of this is off creep.
Yeah. No, fair play. Yeah, no, it makes a lot of sense. Yeah, this fight is not it. These banelings come in pretty late. I almost feel like they shouldn't go up the ramp at this point, just go straight to the army, but he probably already had it rallied up. Was pulling back against the disruptor. Just kind of aiming for the stalkers in this case, right, with the banes?
Yeah, you just want to hit the center. You don't really care too much which units are getting hit. It's just important that they come in early into the fight, so they also tank the damage.
Yeah, I guess that didn't really happen here. They have another remax. As a toss, I'm always a little bit afraid. You know, these are the... I've lost so many games like this, where you win the initial fight, then you feel very good about yourself, and you move slightly too deep on creep. You still just need to, you know, you take one base, or you do one thing, clear the creep, and then you piss off again. Because you know your opponent's army is going to consist of more Ravager Ling Bane at this point. So you really just need to, like, there's no reason for you to attack at any point, basically. As long as there's no Brood Lords on the way, your army is getting better, and the Zerg's army is just getting worse and worse and worse.
Yeah, for sure.
I actually think here, this probably would have been the best fight Serral could have gotten if he had any banelings on the top side. Like, if these banelings would have morphed and Skillos would have made this move, I almost feel like he should have pulled the trigger, no?
I think he still should pull the trigger here, but it's impossible to know. Like, Skillos just worked in 4 extra icons, so they're not in the fight yet. And there's a run by at the top, so this for sure would have been the play. Because now the creep is going to recede, and the Protoss can always kite back to the off-creep location.
Yeah.
So, as long as the creep is still there, it's for sure time to go. Skillos even overstepped further, so...
Yeah,
this was even better.
Yeah, this is a better fight. This actually is the best fight he probably ever could have gotten. But I guess, yeah, the Archons. If there was a Prism here, that would be mighty nice. There's 3 on the way right now. Very cool. 6 supply.
What the hell?
Just in case he loses 1 or 2 against the Viler. You never know. Happens to the best. No judge zone here.
As well with the army.
Yeah. Nice. GG. So I guess this kind of went wrong after the initial nidus, and from there on out, it's kind of over. Similar theme from that first game, no? Seems like
it was very similar. Besides this time, he didn't play overly safe. He actually just tried to counter it in a way where, as you said, you think the Nidus is supposed to win against the Phoenix, but it's, you make a couple of mistakes and that's just not the case anymore.
Yeah, it's kind of sick, honestly. Yeah, nice game out of Skillos as well. It's easy to die. All right, we have one more game, Lambo. That is versus Zest on Berlingrad. Very exciting. I can't put in minus score. I tried giving Serral a -2, but it doesn't work. So I'll just keep it at 0-0. Very nice. I hope Serral never watches these videos. Poor guy, man. I remember back in the day, he would lose a game on the ladder. 5 screenshots on Twitter. Replay uploaded to the drop.sc. Team Liquid post made. Finally thinks that is over, you know. It's been 3 years since people were doing that. And here we go. 3 different ways to beat Serral with Protoss. I feel for the guy sometimes, but yeah, it is what it is. All right, Zest, slightly different player from from both Hero and Skillet as well. I think we've seen two fun little things now. So both games Serral got behind. One time it was because Hero had a very tight early game, a very confusing early game, I would say. The second time was because Skillet played a build order that you kind of want a hard counter or blind counter with a Nihilus. That didn't end up working out. Now we have Zest, who is a very different player, either very aggressive or tends to still like these big triple Stargate plays. This time he does something slightly different. Take on a lot of the smaller maps, Berlingrad, Curious Mind. He likes to play Twilight builds, and he has a bunch of them.
Yeah. He has, the build he's going to use on this one, he also used against me in Katowice, actually.
Really?
And it was funny because that's I beat Zest at Katowice. He was the only guy I beat, and I come back to the players' lounge and they were like, "Oh my god, that was such a shit build." And I'm like, "Okay, thanks, guys." Yes. the one, just let me have this one, all right?
One for in groups.
Later, yeah.
Very nice. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Now a couple of weeks later, Surrey lost against it, so maybe it wasn't that shit after all.
Yeah.
But it's still, they managed to make me feel worse about it, so
yeah.
Kudos to the players.
Kudos to the players. the harm had already been done. Can't go back to them now. See, it's not that bad, guys.
Yeah.
Serral lost to it. Twilight Castle, it's a fun little build order. Zest also an unenlightened player, still blocking his opponent's hatchery. The theory here, guys, on being an enlightened Protoss is that if you're not going to chrono boost your first adepts and be a little bit annoying to the Zerg, there's no point in blocking your opponent's natural hatchery. Because the eco for the Zerg isn't necessarily changed that much, and the eco for the Protoss in the enlightened Protoss mind changes a little more. So unless you're actually willing to put in the work with the initial adepts, there's no point in trying to block it, and you'd rather have a little bit extra money with a later gateway scout. We see Zest is not quite enlightened yet like the rest of us. But then again, if you open up Twilight, I think you can almost always say that it's probably best to still block the natural, just because of the threat of the glaive adept, right?
Yeah, I don't think going glaives without a block is very strong. So whenever you start your warp gate right away, even I think blocking makes a lot of sense, because as a Zerg you need to prepare for the glaives a little bit more.
Yeah.
And if you don't get blocked.
Yeah, what would be the difference in response for the Zerg? Would you just get like more drones, like 2-3 more drones?
More drones, and also you can
wall.
You don't have to make all the blind Zerglings because you can wall exactly.
Yeah. Sometimes I like to ask a question and then answer it while you're busy answering as well, so people know that I also knew the answer. So,
that's fantastic.
Yeah, when that happens, don't worry. It's not truly an interruption. It is just, me chiming in at the same time. Okay, so this is a 8-gate glaive DT.
Yeah.
This looks very interesting. I'd never seen this build before this game, and I have a feeling I'm not going to be seeing it too much in the future either. It looks relatively weak. In my opinion, it's going to be a very late third base. Serral will be extremely aware of this. It seems like a pretty straightforward response defensively, no? You just play Ling Roach initially, and then you just continue building Roaches. Very similar to how people used to beat any type of DT into charge build. Am I incorrect?
You can't really know until you see the warp window. And nowadays we don't make Roaches against a DT drop. So the entire point is that this counters the Ling defense. Because usually the optimal DT drop defense is you just make a couple of links and then you're safe against the DTs and then you follow the prism so it can't morph icons right away.
Mm-hmm.
So you don't even need any roaches ready. This game I was really surprised that Serral died because he actually did make Ling Roach and he even made a spine and he had the queens. So if the build was really complete shit, it should not work because this is actually a decent response. So this game I was actually very surprised by Zest winning.
Isn't at this point the lack of a third base like a little bit suspicious?
Yes. I mean, yeah. At this point it is, but I think until 5 minutes it's justifiable because you can just cancel it with Zerglings otherwise against the DT drop.
Yeah. Yeah, usually you want to get like a couple of zealots or something there to try and defend it. Because, yeah, no, I agree on that, for sure. Something that Jesus Christ, that happens very often is that when the Archons end up morphing, that the links go across the map straight away, and then if you don't have any units there, you just lose the Nexus. So here Serral's going to spot it. He spotted it with the Ling already, no? The Zealot move out, or did he just barely miss it? No, I think he spotted it with the Ling.
I mean, he's been making us spine on units already, so...
Ah, yeah, he's pretty ready. What's the response from here on out? Do you give up the third base, wall the natural, or
Oh,
do you
no,
just...
no, you hold.
You
Probably one spine in every base and then just try to split up your army and hold. I don't see a reason why that shouldn't work.
Okay, so he pulls the drones, sends in the links. Same time we get a big warp in the natural with the Archon Zealots. Once Zealots start fighting queens though, like this, and there's no roaches nearby, this does feel pretty bad for Serral, no?
Yes, this was a missplit of units basically. Like his units were mispositioned. He needed some queens at the third base and then you can keep mining there. Which mining is pretty relevant because you get more roaches over time. And that spine, if there's queens in front of it, is basically untouchable. And then the rest should just be inside the mineral line of the natural, and then you can use drones as well to defend.
Is that warp in ever allowed to happen, or like can you stop that?
Yeah, I mean probably you can. I mean those queens he realized very fast, and then he went towards the natural with the queens. But he didn't take the perfect path, I guess. So yeah, he moved on the icons. If those three queens just go to the bottom of the base initially, for sure he can cancel the warp, and that's kind of what he was banking on. Serral, that is. Yeah. He can get the warp prism right away. Because if he gets that without the zealot warping, obviously it's an easy hold. But
yeah. Now then it's actually over. Like if he gets it before the zealot warping, it's game. Yeah.
I mean now the queens are way overextended because of it, and that kind of loses him the game.
Kind of a tight build though to hold, no? On this type of drone count. Doesn't actually look very easy. I'm very impressed by your hold at Katowice, Lambo. That's I'm trying to say, you know?
No, the only reason I held was because you lost two icons for free in the main base because I cut off the prism.
Very nice. Alright. Well, that's it for Serral now. And that gives us the 3 different ways today on how to beat Serral. Serral lost every single worker, 14 workers, steps out of the game. I'd like to thank Lambo for gifting me his time. Is there anything you'd like to shout out, Lambo? Do you have somewhere where you stream, for example?
Well, I stream on twitch.tv/LamboKing. I also have a YouTube, it's LamboSC2. Don't really upload though. And the final shout out is more of a question really to you. Now that you saw the 3 ways of beating Serral, can you do it yourself now as well, or?
Yeah, no. This is all theoretical. We gain theoretical knowledge on how to beat Serral. This way, my YouTube audience can relate with me as well. If I can beat them and they can beat them, we feel similar. So
I see.
It needs to stay like that. Otherwise, I will not be relatable anymore. And that's the only power that I truly have. No, I mean, there were some good builds in there. And I think some good points were made. Denying the creep, you know, tricking him into making a Nidus all-in. All-inning off of 2 bases. But what's the real weakness, Lambo? If you were to, you know, put it all together.
I think doing some fake build and then doing something economic, like Hero did, I think is probably on average the best against Serral, if I had to guess. But also just tricky builds in general are good, because Serral tries to be safe against everything. And that is usually his downfall, because he thinks he's so much better than his opponent that he tries to play and just to survive. Because if he gets to the later stages of the game, he's going to be fine. But if you're on a level like Hero or some other top Protoss players, they can still play good enough to then bring that lead into an eventual victory. So I think just playing either very greedy builds or builds that look like aggression and then are still just economic, I think is the best to beat Serral. If I had to guess from the Protoss perspective.
All right. Sounds good. Well, thank you very much once again. You heard it here, guys. If you're diamond or platinum player, just fake him, then greedy, and you'll be good. That's going to be it for me today. Thanks everyone for watching. We'll see you all next time for more videos. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel, hit the like button, and see you all next time. Ciao, ciao.